We go out again to the Make It Right Call Kyle Wright hotline and bring in Eric Edholm. Eric, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. Doing well, fellas. What's going on?
Man, it's always great to talk to you, man. So listen, mock drafts are going crazy. I know you always have your eye on this situation. In your opinion, what's the proper draft strategy for the Cleveland Browns as they head into 2026?
Yeah. I think gaining some clarity under center has to happen first, right? Like, we have to know who's the head coach, who's the offensive coordinator, what's the situation, who are they throwing support behind? That has to happen first. Obviously, they have enough ammunition to move where they need to move in the draft, to get anybody they want. They obviously have a free agent route that could have some intriguing options this year. I say free agency, also, veterans who are cut, and, trade route as well. But, there's some interesting options like Malik Willis out there too. And, you have to weigh the pros and cons of what you've done in the past and what's worked and whether that's still a viable route out. But, this isn't going to be a quarterback class in the draft this year that really gets people excited. I mean, even, it sort of feels like it could be a one-man class, and we haven't officially even heard on that one man yet. So, right now there's a lot of fog in the air about what this class actually offers.
You talk about clarity for the coaching search, obviously, which for the Browns is nearing the end of its second week now. And we know already next week Jim Schwartz is getting a second interview. I'm kind of at a place right now, Eric, where it feels like it's either going to be they promote Jim Schwartz or they, sort of take a flyer and try to sort of get ahead of the curve on one of these young up-and-coming coordinator guys like a Grant Udinski, for example, who's interviewing for the job today. What is your sense of where things are kind of headed with this search? And if it's one of the young guys, like, how do you, without having all the information, because these guys have never been head coaches, how do you sort of know the time is now for one of those young guys?
It's a great question. I think every team that's ever had a coaching opening and isn't going after an established, a name like a John Harbaugh or whatever is asking that as well. You can look back at past results and say, hey, they were a successful coordinator, these years. They did this and that. But we also know, too, that being a good coordinator does not guarantee one becomes a good head coach. In fact, again, I used to use Matt LaFleur as an example. Obviously, now there's still some question whether he'll be back. I think he will. But, I used him as an example because he was coming off a season 1 year with the Titans where, the results were kind of incomplete. I mean, it wasn't like he was a bad coordinator, but you also had questions about his offense that year. Didn't seem to get along great with Mike Vrabel, and yet he got a head coaching opportunity. Mike Tomlin, too. Again, I'm not just mentioning guys who are under fire this year, but guys who've had success in the league. And Tomlin spent 1 year as Vikings coordinator 20 years ago. I wouldn't say had a mind-blowing season by any stretch of the imagination, but the Steelers found somebody that they believed in. So, the hotshot coordinator thing, yes, Ben Johnson's do come around, and maybe not as many this year, but, there certainly are examples of those types of guys. But, this is where your league intelligence kind of creates the list, right? That's how you get to a Dan Pitcher, and that's how you get to an Aiden Dirty. And, obviously Jesse Minter's been kind of on the spotlight for a couple of years now. But, Udinski, as you mentioned, was another one who, again, it's not a household name or something. And I think you have to understand that some of these working relationships will, bring names to the table. Hey, I worked with this guy 4 years ago, felt like he was a head coach in training. This is the kind of guy who, I would love to throw my support behind, and, gets whittled down from there. So I wouldn't be shocked, obviously, as you pointed out, the possibility of I don't know if you call it off the radar, but not a established name or something like that. And that may not be a bad thing. Again, it's more about how you can lead 53 guys and how you can handle the big picture than it is drawing up cool X's and O's as a head coach, I think.
Do you think the Cleveland Browns job is attractive, Eric?
I think it is to a degree. I always, when we talk about openings, right, you can ask who's the quarterback. You can say how much cap space do they have. How deep is their well of draft picks? And I think all those are fair questions to ask, right? You want to know what's the status of the job I'm coming into. But, when I talk to agents in the past, they would always point out, especially for the guys who've been around the block a little bit, right? Either they're established assistant coaches, they've been in the league, had a foothold for a while, might have their choice of coordinator jobs or something too, also interviewing for head coaching jobs. But definitely for anybody that level or above, they want to know who the owner is, and they want to know what kind of working relationship. For instance, take this Harbaugh situation in New York. We all heard, okay, he's going to be a Giant. This is happening. Now they're talking about possibly introducing him on Tuesday. Why is that? Because it's hung up right now. It's hung up on the power structure and who he would report to. He's not going to report to Joe Shane, who's 15 years younger than he is, and that's why Harbaugh feels like he has the leverage. And I think one of the reasons why Cleveland is treated with some suspicion is because they want to know, is the owner going to be drafting Shedeur Sanders for me? Is the owner going to be signing Deshaun Watson over my back or whatever? And that's going to be the problem for somebody who feels like they have a little leverage and somebody who feels like they have maybe other opportunities. They can say, hey, this is a concern for me. And so that uncertainty, I think, kind of clouds the whole picture in Cleveland a little bit.
I want to kind of elaborate on that a little bit because, I mean, not even just the ownership part of it. Like, I'm kind of curious about just like age differences between different coaches and different personnel people because, I've been thinking about this a lot with Jim Schwartz. Like, if the Browns seem like they want to keep Jim Schwartz. There was reports that they have talked to at least some of the candidates about maybe keeping him on staff if they get the job. So if they hired like a Udinsky or a Shieldhouse, who's clearly, 30, 40 years,
30 and 35 years old.
His junior, like how do you sort of convince how does that work in the NFL where there's different, like I guess it's probably person to person, I'm sure, but how do you sort of smooth some of those things over, whether it's a GM and a coach relationship or a coach and an assistant coach relationship?
Yeah, I saw it a little bit up close here in Chicago. I was doing some Bears stuff when they hired Matt Nagy, and interestingly, Vic Fangio had been on staff for the previous staff. Of course, by that point, he was a well-known, established defensive coordinator. He got an interview for the Bears head coaching job in 2018. I think he was the first interview, out of respect. And, You're in the house, you're in the building, tell us what you've seen, whatever. Didn't ultimately go that direction, pick Nagy. Nagy said, I would love to have Vic Fangio as my defensive coordinator. Vic's from, he's old school, right? I mean, he's a Pennsylvania guy who coached his way up from high school all the way to the NFL. How would he work with a guy like Nagy? They ended up winning in the division and having kind of a terrific season that first year. Eventually, that relationship kind of went its separate ways, if you will. But in like a short-term situation, I think it possibly can work. Maybe long-term too. I'm sure there are other examples of this. Maybe Andy Reid and Jim Johnson years ago, when they first kind of hooked up in 99 or 2001, whatever it was. I don't remember exactly the year when Johnson came on. But, there are examples of older, established sort of mentor coordinator being on the same staff as young head coach. Now, you got to be smart about how you handle it if you're the young guy, right? Deferential to your elders, if you will, to guys who've forgotten more about football than that sort of thing and all that. But, it's not guaranteed to work either because there can be egos at play. There can be a sense of this guy doesn't know what he's doing or I'm going to come over the top. Obviously friction on coaching staffs is nothing new. And so you do worry about something like that.
Eric, I got to get back to what you said about, the ownership part of this, because to me, it kind of sounded like, when you think about Jimmy Haslam as the owner, that can create some reserve and certain candidates or simply take other candidates off the map completely. I'm pretty sure there are people in the fan base here in Cleveland for the Browns that have mixed opinions on Andrew Berry. Do you think the reserve is more so I don't want to work under Andrew Berry or I don't want to work under Jimmy Haslam?
I mean, I don't. It's hard for me to put myself in other people's shoes and try to project what they're thinking. But I think there could be a scenario where a candidate is worried about both and just sort of saying, "Hey, I'm kind of outnumbered here." Like when push comes to shove, are they going to be in my corner? Because we've got some hard times here. We still have to pull ourselves out of this ditch, and so I need the two of you guys help push while I drive, or whatever the situation is. Again, I know I'm using a lot of vague metaphors here, but still, yeah. I mean, it's not like I've talked to people and oh my God, can you believe this Andrew Berry guy? And they're just trashing him left and right. I haven't heard that level of vitriol or suspicion with him, but you hear kind of whispers about maybe that setup isn't ideal. Maybe that isn't for me. Maybe those guys have an in-house candidate they like, or a lesser-known assistant coach whom they can kind of mold and create in their own sort of likeness, if you will. I don't really know exactly what the impression of people is out there interviewing for this job, but for the reasons I pointed out earlier, you could see why there might be a little bit of suspicion. Are we all in this together? Are we going to have a shared vision? Disagreements are fine, but big picture vision has to be kind of locked in a little bit.
And that's well said. Eric Edholm joining us on the Make It Right, Call Kyle Wright hotline. Getting back to the draft here for a second, Eric. When I think about where the Browns are at, 6th overall, I think about the fact that their quarterback situation is still very much a mystery, and we'll see how that sort of takes shape once they hire a coach, obviously. But it does kind of feel like they're set up in this sort of bridge situation once again. Do you feel that maybe trading back again, like they did last year, is maybe the more prudent move to once again position yourself where if next year's class really is the class that we're all touting it to be, they can maybe get in that mix for a quarterback next year?
Yeah, that's going to be the interesting part, is really another year where it feels like the top of the draft is less weighty than what we saw a couple years ago with that Jamar Chase, Micah Parsons first round, where it seemed like there were blue chippers everywhere at the top of the draft. And this is not a bad draft per se, but I don't know that it carries the real heft at the top. I mean, at least as of this moment, I know we're pretty much past the deadline at this point, except for the guys playing Monday. But yeah, I mean, again, this isn't to bash, like Ohio State has a ton of good prospects this year, and several of them will end up in the first round. But, when we're talking about trade-up candidates, is there a number one receiver? Is there a quarterback? Is there that elite pass rusher? I don't know that you can say there is. I mean, that's what I worry about. Where are the trade-up candidates coming from? Now, if they want to slide down from that second first rounder or something like that and continue adding for the 2027 till, I get it. Yeah, that would possibly make some sense. There are certain positions this year that are really good. Corner, defensive edge, I should say, and D-line as a whole, I would say is pretty good. And there's some other positions I think stand out. I think receivers deeper than some people realize, but the lack of number one options, potential number ones, is what kind of limits it a little. So, there are elements of this draft that are attractive. What I don't think is that there are those sure things at the top that are going to really lure people to mortgage future picks and move up.
All right, Eric, so I'm going to break this down, and me and Spencer, we're going to talk about this next segment. So based on what you just said about the positions that you feel is deeper in this draft, is it crazy outside of my mind to think that the Cleveland Browns very well might draft 2 offensive linemen with their 2 picks in the first round? Is that absurd?
I don't think it's absurd. I really don't. I mean, I'm guessing at this point that they would consider that or one and then another one in right after the first round or something like that. Yeah, I mean, there will be some good offensive tackle options at number 6, I think. I think it would be surprising if there wasn't at least one that they liked. So that kind of leans me in that position. Again, it's January. Things can change, right? One signing, one trade, one whatever. But, yeah, I would say that's probably if I had to put my support behind one position early on, that's probably got to be it. I would think receiver comes into play at some point. obviously you have to have some kind of addition to the quarterback room, I would think, or some kind of resolution there a little bit. But offensive line feels like a double dip kind of spot for sure, whether it's first or first and later.
I'm going to get you this probably only have time for one more. I'm going to get you out of here with this, Eric. I'm going to make you give me who the Browns head coach ends up being.
Oh, man.
And I'm also going to ask you who is starting at quarterback for the Browns week 1 next year. Is it somebody currently on the roster, Shedeur, Deshaun, Dylan Gabriel maybe, or is it somebody that they have yet to find or bring in?
I hope you text Spencer and cuss him out after this. Go ahead.
Yeah, so it's a 2-part question. I got a time limit, and I've got 2 impossible questions to answer. No big deal, man. On a Saturday morning? Oh, right. Yeah.
And it's going to be clipped. You already know how this is going down.
It's a par 5, and I'm hitting left-handed here, yeah. Man,
we won't hold it against you.
Yeah,
we won't.
I mean, we got to see what happens with Chris Shula. I think he is obviously going to be on a lot of lists, so that's a name you got to sort of file away. We don't know yet, but I think they're still so early in the process that they're thinking, they have options. I mean, is Schwartz a fallback potential job? Is he an option for them? That's what I want to know. It doesn't seem like he is right now. I mean, it seems like he would be the sort of the last ditch if they can't find anybody they like. They hire him. But, yeah, I mean, keep an eye on Dan Pitcher. That's especially dipping into an opponent, a division rivals to get one of their guys. And the second question, quarterback, I think Shedeur did enough to offer him another chance. Gabriel's an unknown. I would treat him as a wild card option, I guess. He wasn't terrible, but he wasn't great either. And it's going to depend on the philosophies of that new coach. But, yeah, I would say it's got to be one more guy, too. And if they have a chance to sign somebody like Malik Willis, it's got to be pretty big money. And, and they're going to have some other people competing with them.
Eric, man, we appreciate your time on this Saturday morning. You did well, man, as you kind of got through that
Appreciate
question.
you, Eric.
Appreciate you, man.
I knew you could handle it. I knew you could handle it. That's why I did it.
I can skip my Saturday morning workout. All right.
All right, man. Take care, man. That's Eric Edholm joining us on the Make It Right, Call Kyle Wright hotline.